It is impossible for a person to truly know their Creator and not love Him. It is impossible for a person to love their Creator and not submit to Him. And it is absolutely impossible for a person to submit to their Creator, the Almighty Allah, and be unhappy. This is absolutely impossible.
All right, today we're jumping into one of the most profound, most foundational names of God in Islam, al-Khaliq. That's the Creator. We're going to explore this incredible idea of creation, not from something, but from absolute nothingness. And we'll see exactly why this concept is so central to the Islamic worldview. Just think about this for a second. A knowledge so vast it accounts for every single grain of sand, every drop of rain, every leaf on every tree. That incredible scale, well, it really sets the stage perfectly for understanding the kind of power we're talking about today. So before we can even really get into the name al-Khaliq, we've got to grasp the idea behind it. And that is this concept of an absolute, all-encompassing power over existence itself. It's a very idea of divine dominion. Now, this idea of dominion isn't just about, making things. It's way bigger than that. It's about a totally effortless command over everything you see and everything you don't. From the seasons changing to the raw fury of a storm, it's all seen as part of this one divine power. But here's the part that is just, it's mind-bending. The belief is that for this power, creating our entire vast universe is no more difficult than creating a single tiny atom. There's no effort, no strain, no fatigue. It's just done. And this one line right here just captures the effortlessness perfectly. See, it's not a process of building or assembling something piece by piece. No, it's about pure will becoming reality in an instant. The command itself is the creation. So, this incredible, almost unbelievable power of effortless creation, it's all wrapped up in one specific name. Let's take a look at what that name is and what it really truly means. Al-Khaliq. Okay, so it translates as the Creator, but the meaning goes so much deeper than that. It specifically means bringing something into being from absolute, total nothingness. And not just that, but doing it with a precise plan, a measure, and a purpose. This isn't random. It's completely intentional. And this brings us to a really important distinction. You see, when we humans create, whether it's a piece of art, a new phone, or a building, what we're really doing is rearranging stuff that's already here, right? We take wood or metal or silicon and we reshape it. But the divine act of khalaqa is on a whole other level. It's about originating something from pure non-existence. It's an ability that's described as being totally unique to God. So, where does this idea actually come from? Well, we can trace it right back to the primary source, the Qur'an, where the name al-Khaliq shows up explicitly. Right here, you can see al-Khaliq listed right alongside other creative names like the inventor and the fashioner. It's like they're all showing different facets of this single incredible divine act. It's part of this beautiful symphony of names. This verse really drives home the sheer scope we're talking about. It's not just the creator of some things, or, the important things. It is the creator of all things, everything, from the biggest galaxies down to the tiniest subatomic particle. And in this one, the act of creation is tied directly to the absolute core principle of monotheism. The logic is simple but incredibly powerful. If He is the creator of everything that exists, then how could there possibly be any other being worthy of worship? I find this last verse fascinating. It acknowledges that, humans can create in our own limited way. We shape and form things. But then it establishes this ultimate divine supremacy. It declares Allah as the best of creators, the one true, unparalleled originator. Okay, so let's shift gears a little from scripture to scholarship. For centuries, some of the most brilliant minds have thought about these verses to really unpack all the layers of meaning packed into this one single name. What's really cool is how these three classical scholars, Ibn Kathir, al-Qurtubi, and al-Ghazali, each give us a totally unique lens to understand al-Khaliq. And get this, they don't contradict each other at all. They just add more depth, more dimension. It's like each one is handing us a new piece of a much bigger puzzle. So let's see what each of them had to say. First up, Ibn Kathir. His focus is all about exclusivity. He really drills down into the original Arabic root of the word, hammering home the point that khalaqa means to create from absolute nothing. For him, the main takeaway is that this is a divine power that has no parallel. Nothing we do can ever compare to it. Then you've got al-Qurtubi, who adds this incredible layer of intelligence and purpose. He says, look, Creation isn't just about bringing stuff into being. It's about doing it with perfect order, with wisdom, and with a precise measure. So for him, al-Khaliq is also the grand planner, the one who makes sure that everything, from a planet's orbit to the veins on a leaf, follows a perfect, wise design.
And finally, al-Ghazali. He comes at it from a more spiritual, almost philosophical angle. He sees the entire universe as a sign, like a giant book of evidence that points back to its author. For al-Ghazali, the simple act of studying nature, of just looking up at the stars and wondering, that itself is an act of worship. It's a way to strengthen your faith and just feel this deep sense of gratitude by recognizing the Creator through His creation.
So, what does all this mean for you and me? For an individual's spiritual life? How does a big theological idea like this actually translate into practice? Well, in Islamic tradition, the names of God aren't just for, academic study. They're used in acts of remembrance, what's known as zikr. Reciting al-Khaliq is tied to some specific spiritual benefits, like being a source of protection. And there's also this beautiful idea that if you consistently repeat the name at night, it can lead to the creation of an angel, and that angel's only purpose? To worship God for you on your behalf. It's literally a creation that's born from remembering the Creator.
And that really brings us to a final powerful thought, kind of echoing what al-Ghazali was talking about. If the entire universe, from the stars in the sky to the amazing complexity of our own bodies, is a message, a sign from the Creator, then our job isn't just to exist in it. It's to read it, to try to understand it, and maybe just to stand in awe of its author. So the question we're left with is, what signs will you read?
Welcome back to the deep dive. We are tackling something today that, well, it honestly made me put the source material down and just stare out the window for a solid 10 minutes.
That is a pretty strong reaction.
I mean, it is warranted. We're talking about existence, not just, why are we here, but the actual mechanics of how anything is here at all. And I want you to picture two things for me.
Okay, I'm ready.
First, imagine the sheer raw energy required to ignite a star. The nuclear fusion, the gravity, the violent massive scale of a galaxy spinning.
Right. It's a level of power that physics can describe with math, but the human brain can't really visualize. It's just too big.
Exactly. Now contrast that with the second image. The vein structure of a single leaf unfolding in your backyard, or the surface tension of a raindrop hitting a window pane.
Massive scale versus intricate microscopic detail.
Yeah. And we are looking at a stack of theological texts and treatises today. We've got classical Quranic exegesis, like Ibn Kathir and al-Qurtubi, and some heavy spiritual philosophy. And they all argue these two things are not just connected, but are identical in terms of the effort required to produce them. We are doing a deep dive into the divine name al-Khaliq.
The Creator.
The Creator. But as I dug into these texts, I realized that the English word creator is doing a lot of heavy lifting that it maybe isn't qualified for. In English, we use create for basically everything. I create a playlist on Spotify. A chef creates a menu.
We create a mess in the kitchen.
Right, exactly. It's a very broad term for us.
And that linguistic lazy habit is exactly what these sources are trying to dismantle right from the start. If you look at the standard dictionary definition, creation implies making something new. But in the theological context of al-Khaliq, what you or I do isn't creation at all.
It's more like assembly.
Precisely. This is the first major distinction the sources make, and it hinges on the Arabic root KHALIQ or khalaqa. This word is incredibly specific. It denotes creating something from absolute non-existence. The academic term is ex nihilo.
So from absolute zero, just the void.
From the void, yes. When you create a birdhouse, you're taking wood that grew from the earth, you're using nails made of metal that was mined from the ground, and you are just rearranging existing atoms into a new shape. You're a fashioner or a manipulator of matter.
Because the stuff was already there.
Right. But al-Khaliq is the power that brings the wood, the metal, the atoms, and the empty space they occupy into being, when previously there was absolutely nothing.
It's the difference between rearranging the furniture in a room and building the house out of thin air. And actually, thin air is wrong too, because even air is something.
That's the difficulty of talking about this. We don't have a human reference point for nothing. We can't picture it. Ibn Kathir, in his commentary, uses this to set up a really interesting rhetorical challenge found in the Qur'an.
The one addressed to the pagans.
Exactly. He references the verses asking them, did they create the heavens and the earth? It's a direct challenge to the concept of causality. He's arguing that you can carve an idol, you can build a massive temple, but you cannot bring a single atom into existence on your own.
And the sources make a really big deal out of the methodology of creation, if you can even call it a methodology, because usually when we talk about making things, we talk about a process.
Labor, sweat, time, trial, and error.
Right. But the texts here are adamant. There is no process in that sense.
This is the concept of be, and it is. The text describe the mechanism of creation purely as a command of will. And this leads to that fascinating comparison in the source material regarding difficulty that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, this was the part that I found most difficult to wrap my head around. The text claims that for al-Khaliq, creating an entire universe full of swirling galaxies is exactly the same difficulty level as creating a single gnat.
It has to be, logically speaking.
But how? It feels so counterintuitive.
Well, if you think about it, difficulty is just a measure of resistance against your strength. Lifting a car is hard for you because gravity fights your muscles.
Okay, that makes sense.
But if you are the one who created the concept of gravity, and you created the muscles, and you created the car, there is no resistance to overcome. The sources emphasize that this power is not limited by fatigue. It cannot be overcome by quality or quantity.
So whether it's a supernova or a dust mite, the cost to the creator is literally zero.
Zero energy expenditure.
Yeah.
It is simply the will for it to exist, and it exists.
I want to get into the nuance of the names here because this is where the deep dive aspect really kicks in for me. I was reading Surah al-Hashr, specifically verse 59.24, and it lists 3 names in a row. It says al-Khaliq, which is the creator, al-Bari, the originator, and al-Musawwir, the fashioner.
Yes, a very famous sequence.
In English, those sound like synonyms. I feel like I could use them totally interchangeably in a sentence.
In English, sure, but in the theology, they represent distinct, precise stages of bringing reality into being. And the scholars, particularly the linguistic experts in the tafsir, break this down beautifully. Think of it like building that house again.
Okay, so I'm the architect.
Right, you're the architect. Al-Khaliq is the architect. This is the stage of taqdir, which means decreeing or measuring. Before the house ever exists physically, you have determined its size, its dimensions, the materials needed. You have the idea and the perfect measure of the thing. That is khalaqa.
So al-Khaliq is the one who determines what the thing will be before it even is.
Yes. Then you have al-Bari, the originator or the maker. This is the act of bringing that measured idea from non-existence into physical existence. It's the materialization, the breaking forth of the form into reality.
And then finally al-Musawwir.
The fashioner. This is the aesthetic shaping. Why does the leaf look exactly like that? Why does the zebra have stripes? Why do you look different from your brother? Al-Musawwir gives the creation its distinct, unique features and beauty.
So the sequence in the verse is totally logical.
Absolutely. He measures it as Khaliq, he materializes it as Bari, and he shapes it as Musawwir.
It's a complete production line, but without the time delay we associate with production.
Exactly. For us, those stages take months or years. For the divine, it is instantaneous. But the distinction in the attributes remains to show the depth of the control. It's not just a chaotic, poof, here's a universe. It's a measured, materialized, and perfectly fashioned universe.
This idea of measuring actually brings us to al-Qurtubi. I noticed in the notes he's identified heavily with the Ash'ari school of theology. We should probably pause and explain why that matters, because for a general listener, Ash'ari might just sound like a historical footnote.
It is crucial context for understanding his commentary. The Ash'ari school is fiercely focused on avoiding anthropomorphism.
Making God sound like a human.
Exactly. When al-Qurtubi talks about al-Khaliq determining the best order, he's being very, very careful with his language. He doesn't want you to think of God sitting there with a blueprint, scratching his chin, trying to figure out the best way to make a tree.
Because that implies he didn't know the best way 5 minutes ago, which means he wouldn't be all-knowing.
Correct. Al-Qurtubi explains that the order we see, the fact that the sun is the perfect distance from the earth, or the gravity holds us down but doesn't crush our bones, is a reflection of eternal wisdom.
It's not a learned skill.
Right. It's not that God figured it out through a process. It's that his creation naturally manifests the perfect form because his attributes are perfect. Al-Qurtubi says al-Khaliq determines the best form and best order, not through trial and error, but through absolute pre-eternal knowledge.
Speaking of pre-eternal, there was a point from Imam at Tahawi that I honestly had to read 3 times. He talks about time in a way that breaks your brain a little. He says Allah was the creator even before he created anything.
Ah, yes, the temporal paradox.
It just feels like a contradiction. How can you be a painter if you haven't painted a painting yet?
At-Tahawi is protecting the core idea of God's absolute perfection here. If God became the creator only after he made the universe, That would imply he changed.
Like he gained a new attribute.
Right? Like, he leveled up somehow. But foundational theology states God is unchanging and perfect eternally. So, he possesses the attribute of KHALIQ eternally. The creation of the universe was simply the moment that attribute manifested to us. He didn't need the universe to exist to complete his own identity.
And as-Sanusi touches on this too, right? Tying it to will and predestination.
Yes, as-Sanusi emphasizes that the act of creation is completely bound to divine will. It wasn't an accident or a forced outcome. It was a deliberate choice from pre-eternity.
That separates the doer from the action in a way that's hard for us to grasp because we're so defined by what we do. I'm a podcaster because I podcast. If I stop, I'm just a guy talking to a microphone in a room.
And that's the ultimate limitation of human language.
Yeah.
We are what we do. Al-KHALIQ is who he is, regardless of whether the universe exists or not.
Wow. I want to pivot to the scope of this control. We talked about the macro stuff, the galaxies, the raising of the heavens, as the Qur'an puts it, the changing of seasons, storms, earthquakes. But the source material spends a surprising amount of time on the micro.
It really does.
And it's not just a general, he knows small stuff. It's a highly specific inventory.
This is where the attribute of al-KHALIQ merges directly with omniscience. The texts don't just say, he made everything. They get extremely granular. The Creator knows the exact count of grains of sand in every desert.
Which is a number we can't even realistically model on a computer.
He knows the exact count of drops of rain that have fallen since the beginning of time, the number of leaves on every single tree. And there's the famous imagery used in these spiritual texts about a black ant on a black rock in the darkest part of the night.
And al-KHALIQ hears its footsteps.
Sees it, hears it, knows its movements, and actively sustains its biological life in that exact moment. It's a poetic way of saying there is absolutely no place to hide in this creation. You are never offline.
The text also mentions the secrets of thoughts and what the winds carry. That phrase, what the winds carry, is beautiful, but the secrets of thoughts hits a bit closer to home for me. It suggests that the act of creation isn't restricted to just physical matter.
It suggests he created the mind and the subconscious itself. If al-KHALIQ is the one who originated the very capacity for thought, then he is fully aware of what passes through that capacity. It implies that your internal monologue is just as loud and clear to the Creator as your spoken words.
That is both incredibly comforting and, I have to admit, slightly terrifying.
It's meant to be both. It's absolute accountability, but it's also total intimacy. You are never misunderstood by him, because the one who built the machinery of your mind knows exactly how it works.
I do have to play devil's advocate here, though, looking at the texts. We are establishing that he is the only creator, ex nihilo, from absolute nothing. But I was looking at Surah 23, verse 14, and the text says, "So blessed is Allah, the best of creators," plural. Best of creators. Doesn't that grammatically imply there are other creators out there?
That is a very common question, and the classical scholars address it directly. It goes straight back to that first linguistic distinction we made. When the Qur'an uses the word creators in the plural regarding others, it's using the word in its base linguistic sense of measuring or fashioning. Humans are creators in the metaphorical sense. You create a plan, you create a building.
So it's acknowledging our ability to manipulate the matter that's already there.
Exactly. It's saying, sure, you can create things by moving atoms around and building structures. But Allah is the best of creators because his creation is original, instantaneous, and from absolutely nothing. It's a comparison of category, not just quality. His creation is foundational reality. Ours is entirely borrowed.
Okay, so we have built up this massive theological framework today. Infinite power, zero fatigue, absolute knowledge of the black ant and the black hole. The question I always have to ask when we do these deep dives is, so what?
The practical application.
Right. What does this mean for the listener who is stuck in traffic right now, or maybe they are worried about a layoff at work? How does knowing about the mechanics of the Big Bang help with my mortgage?
So what is actually all about mental load? The source material explicitly links this deep theological knowledge to the removal of daily fear.
How so?
It's about scale and reliance. If you truly internalize that al-KHALIQ brings the entire cosmos into existence every microsecond without any fatigue whatsoever, it completely reframes your personal stressors. The text argues that the one who sustains the complex biological machinery of your body without you having to consciously think about beating your heart or expanding your lungs is more than capable of managing your external circumstances.
It's the idea that my problem is objectively microscopic compared to the systems he is already running effortlessly.
Exactly. If the difficulty level for creating a spinning galaxy is 0, then the difficulty level of resolving your financial crisis or your health scare is also 0. It removes the paralyzing fear that a problem is somehow too big for God to handle.
The sources also mention some very specific practical traditions, what they call zikr, or remembrance. And I want to get into the mechanics of this because the texts make it clear it's not just about saying a magic word.
No, it's deeply tied to psychological and spiritual conditioning. The texts detail specific benefits associated with repeating the name al-Khaliq. For example, there is a very specific tradition of repeating it habitually at night.
This was the one involving the angel, right? I found this fascinating.
Yes. The source says that if a person makes a habit of repeating this name at night, Allah creates an angel specifically to worship him, and the reward of that angel's continuous worship is gifted to the person who did the remembrance.
That is such a wild concept. It's almost like spiritual compounding interest.
It is fascinating because it ties beautifully back to the core meaning of the name. You invoke the Creator, and his response is to physically create something new, a new being whose sole purpose is to generate good on your behalf. It's a dynamic interaction. You aren't just reciting words to a wall, you are engaging directly with a generative force.
And then there was the 7-day tradition mentioned in the texts, repeating the name 100 times for 7 days for protection from calamities. How do the scholars explain that working? Is it treated like a shield or a spell?
Definitely not a spell. It's about presence of heart. Scholars like al-Ghazali would argue that by focusing your mind intensely on the attribute of al-Khaliq for 7 days, really meditating on the fact that he creates everything, including the very things you are currently afraid of, you fundamentally shift your internal state.
So it changes you, not necessarily the external threat.
Right. You stop fearing the creation, the calamity itself, and you start relying entirely on the Creator.
Yeah.
That profound shift in mindset is what actually provides the protection or the internal peace.
It's cognitive reframing through a dedicated spiritual practice.
Precisely. You are consciously training your brain to see the source behind the threat, rather than just panicking at the threat itself.
This brings us back perfectly to al-Ghazali's big action item for all of this, which is contemplation. We touched on it briefly, but he thinks this is the highest possible form of worship.
He really does. He argues that looking at a tree isn't just a biology lesson, it's pure theology.
So if I'm walking my dog tomorrow morning and I stop to look at a spider web covered in dew, that act is worship.
If you look at it as a sign or an ayat of al-Musawwir, the fashioner, then yes, absolutely. Al-Ghazali says the whole universe is essentially a book authored by God, but most of us just walk on the pages without ever bothering to read them. Contemplation is the intentional act of reading the book.
That completely changes the way you look at the mundane parts of your day. A traffic jam isn't just an annoying delay, it's a complex system of matter and will. A sudden rainstorm isn't just weather ruining your plans, it's a direct command being executed.
It creates a highly cohesive worldview. You aren't living in a random, chaotic universe where things just bump into each other by chance. You are living in a deeply deliberate, authored environment.
And that actually leads me to the thought I want to leave everyone with today. We've talked about the massive scale of the galaxy and the tiny details of the ant. But if we take the source material seriously, if al-Khaliq is constantly sustaining and ordering reality at every level, then absolutely nothing is random.
Nothing at all.
It means that the annoying neighbor you run into, the flat tire on your way to work, the unexpected check in the mail, they aren't accidents. They are authored events.
They are specific creations tailored exactly for you in that precise moment.
Which is a heavy, heavy thought. It means there's really no such thing as being in the wrong place at the wrong time. There is only a created place and a created time.
And internalizing that realization completely changes how you react to everything life throws at you.
Yeah.
You stop fighting reality so much, you start asking, why was this specifically created for me to experience today?
A question definitely worth asking. Thank you so much for walking us through this deep dive. It's definitely changed the way I'm going to look at the world when I walk out the door today.
It was a real pleasure digging into this with you.
And thanks to all of you for listening. Keep looking at the details around you. We will see you on the next deep dive.